Hey, what is up, Patreon? It's Rich. It is early. I don't know if I've ever shot a question and answer this early, but I am today. So let's get right to this because I've got to do the review raffles right after this. It doesn't really matter what order we go, and there's some number ones and twos. So I think, if I'm not mistaken, it probably starts at the bottom. Like that would be the first post. So what's up, Martin? How are you? Thank you for being a patron. And look, I'm excited to help you out. So let's see what we've got here. Hello, Rich. Or hi everyone. Hello everyone. Hi, Rich. You could see him. Like my brain is not ready to read. I would like to know if you have some tips on how to choreograph a fight scene. Um, yeah, I mean, in general, what happens when you're like learning to draw is you tend to think of things too literally, and it's the kind of like normal for everyone. But let me put a mark here around this just so we have like a panel border. But like, oh, it's on white. Let's see. I'm just gonna do random panels. There's nothing. There's no rhyme or reason for this, but I'm just gonna do them as like this kind of thing. Um, so we'll say it's like you get 4 panels, although like the classic or if you go like real old school, like they would do like 6 panel pages. Maybe I could, but I would avoid stuff like this because this is how most people would handle it. Is um, you'd have I don't do it on its own layer. I mean, I'm just gonna guess. It's like you might have like a guy standing here and he's looking into the scene. You know what I mean? And then like maybe you've got another person here. He's mad. Swear to God, I'm gonna kill you. I hate you. You've done things to my family. Everything is problem. I don't even know if I'm gonna be able to do like a bad. I mean, not that I would do it so good. I don't want to make it sound that way, but and then if you were gonna have them fight, it might be like let me. I'll just say this guy like reels back, so he. Trying to think of like what my he starts to pull his arm back. If he's doing that, then this arm. Wait, hold on. If he's doing that, then this arm. And I sort of I'll put my arms in the position of vaguely what I'm doing. The reason that I do that is what I want to know is like, is this arm coming forward or is this arm going back into space? Is it going down? Is it slightly going up? You would be surprised how like if you just guess, sometimes you're wrong. So say and this guy starts to react. So he's maybe like turning to start to run, or he might even be protecting himself. Maybe his arm is like this. He's like, this guy's gonna punch me, and he's kind of crouching down now. But what ends up happening, I think, with like people when they're learning to draw, is you tend to put stuff in the shots like this, where everything fits in the panel comfortably. I'm gonna do this quicker now. Like he's punching and then this guy is reacting here. But like to me, a more exciting fight scene is when you have stuff spilling out of the panels. So let me hide this. Would be like you've got same thing is, but maybe you've got the guy kind of like creeping out of the panel, and then he's focused in on someone standing here. I'm kind of getting impatient doing this because it's a lot to explain and draw like quickly. I feel like I'm like going slow, but yeah, if you can have things spilling out of the panel, like say his arm comes up and then this guy is going, well, like, I mean, you could even pull it in, like, where he's, like, um, well, let's see, so if this guy is punching him, I mean, you could have this guy, like, falling back like this. But if you can have stuff spilling out of the panel borders, it definitely helps. I mean, it's like it's a combination of having pretty good figure drawing skills, the ability to be able to crop things in certain ways, and I mean, it's fight scenes to me are like high intermediate challenges, like in terms of like where you need to be to really pull them off good. But I, again, my main point is try not to do it literally where it's like you have one person in the panel punching the other person and everything fits neatly into the panels. I think it's a boring way to do it, where like everything just fits so comfortably into the panel. Because this is kind of my take on it is um, in a fight things get chaotic, and so if you can capture that mood of the chaos of a fight um, more than this type of stuff, it just seems too mundane. It's too practical, and it's too like on a scale of 1 to 9, 9 being like super exciting and 1 being boring. If you've seen the Marvel book where they show the poses, it's kind of the same idea with crops. It's like this stuff is fine, but it leans more towards a 1, 2, or maybe even 3 in terms of excitement. I mean, if you can draw really good, you could probably impress people with a fight that stays very conservatively inside the panels. But this is where you're gonna win, is like having his hand coming up like big here, and um, even sometimes breaking the panel border. You know what I mean? Like controlling that element of it, where you're like, nah, you know what? I'm just gonna go out of the panel border with this fist here, or just that kind of thing, overlapping stuff. I mean, definitely too is don't constantly give each character their own personal space, meaning that they're always like clearly defined. Overlap and stuff like that will go a long way too. So I hope that helps without having a 50-minute answer to the question, because it's not a very simple question to just sort of throw out a fast answer. But yeah, have stuff spilling out of the panels, have your crops where things are tight and have overlap, and if you can have big and small still, that helps. Don't just keep drawing your characters at like medium sizes, very sort of naturally conveniently isolated. So, all right, Cameron, what's up, Cameron? How are you? Happy Friday to you, and thank you for being a patron. Rich, is there a preferred order in which you should start to draw a panel with a detailed background, environment, and characters in a dynamic pose? This is after the initial thumbnail sketch is sorted. Should the background be the first to be drawn, setting up perspective, props, and so forth, and then the characters pose in the scenes? Or should the characters be drawn first in all their sweet dynamic arse, clenching, ready for action pose, and then the background's composed to suit it? I kind of lean towards your latter version, which is like I would have my idea of what I want to do. So if I had a thumbnail of whatever, I'll do it really fast. But like, say this is the scene I'm gonna have everything kind of, well, I'll put the vanishing point here. It's a little more like off center. So everything is kind of going to this. Maybe it's even sort of like this type of scene where that. But yeah, I mean, if I knew that I was going to have stuff like in here, I don't know what I'm going to draw. I'll just say it's like similar to Tech Lab or something. So they've got like these tubes that are experimental things where they put bodies, and there's maybe like an operating table or something in the foreground with like decanters and all this stuff. Like in the like, and this is the thumbnail. Remember, this isn't the actual drawing. This is the just the prevising what you're gonna do. Maybe there's another table here with more stuff or whatever, and then you've got characters in the scene. Sorry, I'm getting a little careless again. Like I said, but I get impatient when I give explanations in these longer videos because it's just so time. It's very time consuming to do drawing explanations of this stuff in a video. But anyway, so say you've got a room like this and there's people in it, whatever they're doing. Maybe there's something dynamic. Maybe you've got a character flying forward. He's flying through the scene. I mean, and you could even make him bigger, but just for shits and giggles, we're going to say that and maybe there's even a character here that's already flown through the scene. So we're just seeing his foot and leg. I don't know. Just kind of spitballing. But anyway, so you've got like maybe a multitude of characters. Maybe there's another one here. Sorry, the depth of field is getting messed up because that character obviously is problematic. But anyway, if you had all that stuff, like if I was going to transfer the thumbnail, and this is where digital really comes in handy, to be honest. I mean, I'm not going to say that you would be wise to do stuff like this digitally if you have the opportunity to do it. Let me just put a panel border around this really quick. Oh, hold on, I'm going to do it in black at least. But yeah, so like say this is essentially going to be the panel. So what I would do like in this situation is I would lighten this. I would find my sort of perspective. And you could do this traditionally, meaning that you could take a pen. I'm gonna do this on another layer though, but you know, you go like, all right, so my horizon line is like right here. It's a little skewed. It's a little thick. Let me go a little thinner so it's not so intrusive. So we're gonna say that the scene itself is sort of at this angle, and the kind of the one vanishing point is approximately like right here. And then you've got another one that's up here, but this one you didn't really completely like figure out where the 3-point perspective is. It's more of an eyeball one where you're just sort of fanning things out, and it'll kind of it shouldn't be too extreme. But yeah, I mean, at that point, I probably would do the figures first. Would be what I would do is I would go in, I would start to outline the figures. So if I'm doing it digitally, I would have my figures on their own layer. So I would call layer 7 just like, you know, foreground figure maybe. And I mean, in terms of like how you would manage this like traditionally is, I mean, you would just have to erase lightly and then go in and start doing it, you know, the old-fashioned way. But anyway, you know, I'll just do the silhouettes of this stuff really fast. So you know. Whatever. So you've got a figure like here. You've got this guy here. Maybe his knee is coming forward or whatever. You've got this, and then yeah, the background would be the last thing that I would do, and just, you know, you put in enough detail where the background exists and it's there, you know, but you know, that it works for you. These characters could be maybe reacting to the people flying by. What? How the hell are they flying through our space lab? He's kind of, maybe he's just taking off, so he's like a little, he's still getting off the ground or something. But you know, the depth of field is a little off on this. I would make this guy a little bit smaller. He's a little big. If this guy is in front of him, to be standing there, maybe not. I mean, kind of feel stuff out. But yeah, I mean, then I would just start to draw the background just as needed. But if you draw the background first, you know what I mean, you could get yourself into some trouble with like what's going on, if that makes sense. So, all right, let's continue. This is tough. This questions are supposed to be verbal. No, I'm just kidding. All right, so let's see. Matt, What's up, Matt? How are you? And I'm going through the number ones first. I will get to the number twos and threes, etc. I see a lot of artists printing sketchbooks that contain characters that they don't own. I know, I see that too. How does the licensing work? Well, they don't license it, Matt. I've heard you talk about selling prints before, like a person selling prints at a con, but doing an entire book of Marvel DC type characters seems like a whole different deal. I mean, technically it is. Marvel or DC could tell you no. In particular, if you fall on their radar and you're making a lot of money on it. I think um, specifically for sketchbooks, like I'm not going to say their name, but someone that works at DC is putting a sketchbook together right now. I mean, they kind of have worked for Image too, but a lot of the sketchbook looked like it was Marvel, DC, and whatever characters that they don't own. I mean, it's it's a risk that you take. I mean, for someone like you doing it, I doubt that you would sell enough copies where they would really care. When I was selling prints at Comic Con, um, I only really sold stuff that I had worked on that was published. But even still, I mean, DC, like the last year or two that I worked with them, um, they were like, it's so like they knew that I only really do one con a year. I only really do San Diego Comic Con, and I mean, I basically go there to represent the work that I do. At the time, I was only representing the work that I really did for them. So me making a few $100s on prints at a Comic Con, I don't think really was a big deal to them. But they were saying something to the effect of, "Well, we'll talk to someone at DC and they can sort of approve this for you or whatever." It never happened, but I think just they sort of like needed to say it. In like I said, I think where you would like if you were say Art Germ or someone big, a real brand name artist, Dan Panosian or something like that, and you did a book that was like Dan Panosian's sketchbook, and it was Marvel characters and Image characters and Harris characters. It's weird because it's like that would be a book that would fall on their radar more quickly. But then you go, well, do I really want to go after Dan Panosian, who works for Marvel, who works for DC? It's just kind of one of those gray areas that you just will have to cross yourself. So it's not really a definitive answer because look, I mean, they could legitimately say don't do it. They've got plenty of lawyers that they could go after you if they really wanted to, but is it worth it? You know, for I mean, imagine the average comic book artist that does a sketchbook of all that stuff, and they sell like maybe they have a great weekend at a show and they sell 100 of them, which is unlikely. But we'll say they're good enough and popular. So $20 a piece, they've made $2,000, which is not a bad payday. But like is DC gonna worry about $2,000 worth of sketchbooks? I don't know, But like I said, I'm not telling you to do it. I'm just saying that, like, I mean, I don't know. All right, so Caleb, do you have any tips on filling in backgrounds with detail and when not to use more detailed backgrounds? I mean, it kind of spills into the Cameron's thing where, um, the characters really should be the priority and sort of the cool factor in most panels. But there are times where the environment becomes the character. Gotham, Akira. There's plenty of times where the background is the star. And in particular, if you're trying to show something impressive, the Death Star, the Millennium Falcon. I mean, although that might not be technically considered a background element, if you went into a hangar on Coruscant or some planet and the Millennium Falcon was sitting there, it's a background. Um, but ultimately, it should fall down on design and also your sense of aesthetics. I mean, there's a lot of artists that sometimes I think that doing really detailed backgrounds is a defense mechanism against not drawing good characters like figures or faces in particular too, is where you'll see people that draw these really really detailed cities and everything, every window and everything is drawn, and their characters kind of are weird looking. They're a little wonky or stuff like that. And usually with time they'll improve both. Where they'll get better at drawing faces or better at drawing figures, and they may or may not keep their backgrounds that detailed. But I wouldn't. I mean, it just ends up being an aesthetic. Like John Paul Leon did pretty detailed backgrounds and could draw figures really good. Lee Bermejo draws real good characters and stuff like that, and very detailed city things. Early on, I would say that Lee maybe leaned on his background skills because his characters were maybe a little more unusual looking. But over a period of a year, 2 years, 3 years, whatever, his characters got cooler and cooler looking. Where it didn't really matter what way he went with it, but he chose to keep the backgrounds bigger. There's an artist that worked at Wildstorm named Dustin Weaver. Dustin does really, really detailed backgrounds. He's really, really good. But there's another one, Tony. What is his last name? I haven't seen him on. Tony Parker. Tony Parker does pretty detailed backgrounds. So it really is up to you. I'm more of a fan of like less backgrounds is better. So although there'll be times, I mean there are times where I draw pretty detailed backgrounds, and sometimes I mean I like to just draw backgrounds. You know what I mean? Like to me, there's something about a sense of space, whether that literally means a sense of space creating depth, or a sense of space meaning that it's atmospheric. A living room can be a sense of space if you draw it creepy enough, or exciting enough, or fun enough. J. Scott Campbell, I thought, did really good backgrounds on Gen 13, but they were very minimal, but they were always fun. Like if he drew the kids like somewhere, the elephants looked cool, the whales looked cool, the buildings were cool, but a lot of times they were simple. You could think of it like a Disney film, you could think of it like a Studio Ghibli film, or you could think of it as like what's the movie called, Metropolis, where it's like everything is drawn. So in terms of tips, I would focus in on who your favorite artists are and what pages that they've done where you get the most excited about the way that they handled it, and then I would use that as a guide to ultimately, for the next year or so, decide how filled you want your background. Does that make sense? If all the artists that you tend to lean towards draw architecture like Atomo or like Ghost in the Shell, they're like Shiro level detailed, well then that's probably what you're going to want to do. You know what I mean? If you don't like how Mike Mignola does backgrounds, or you don't like how I don't know, whatever, Jay Lee does backgrounds, then that's not going to be your thing. If those are if it's the flip of that and those are your favorite, then you would want to go that way. So I hope that helps, Caleb. Batty, what is up? Bad ice cream. I always call you Batty, but it's bad ice cream. All right. Hi, Rich. You kind of got into it a bit the other day in one of your Andy Kubert videos, but what are some tricks, main things to keep in mind to make sure your characters appear consistent? Thanks again. Yeah, I mean, it really comes down to the structure of the heads. So, and the features. If like when we were looking at the Kubert stuff, I was saying that like some of his heads look like Neil Adams in the Batman video, the first one. Let me clean my glasses really quick. I don't know why they get like so freaking dirty. They're very cheap. I would just buy them at like the wherever Target. Let me see. All right. So anyway, so like a Neil Adams male head might be something like this. They're usually kind of like this sort of shape. Everybody looks like sort of like a wizard kind of thing. I'm doing this real quick, but you know what I mean. Everybody's got like kind of mysterious eyes and face like this, and these deep sort of things, and there's a lot of like rendering on like a Neil Adams face. I'll make this like a little shorter. But anyway, so that's kind of like, to me, like a Neil Adams shaped head ish. But when you draw that same character small, you can't all of a sudden like have their face like this. You know what I mean? And that's kind of what I was like it's like a Jim Lee shaped head might be like this, like for his male cranium. This is would be like Emp's head, not his male hero, but anyway, like Jim might have heads that are kind of like this. J. Scott Campbell male heads are kind of like grunge was kind of this shape. Right? But these are all different shaped heads. But no matter how big or small you draw these heads, you need to keep them the sort of the same shape. You can't have you can't. Sorry, my computer's thinking. You don't want to have a character that looks like the bad guy in Aladdin. You know what I mean? Like one of these type of faces. I think he has like a. I think he's maybe. But you know what I mean, like that, like this to me is more like a Neil Adams head. So you just want to make sure it's all proportions. You know, the thing is like if you draw your characters and you put your eyes super far apart, big or small, you know, and the nose is right here, and the mouth is right here, and you usually sink in the cheekbones. That structure has to stay the same no matter if it's big or small, you know what I mean? And so if you go back and look at if you go back and look at um the Bingham, Jerry Bingham's art, even his tiny heads, like he would draw heads like this size, they still captured this sort of feeling, whatever size they were. And with Andy's stuff on the one book, I felt like that they drifted just the tiniest bit. It's like it's a very minor thing, and it doesn't really matter in the scheme of things. But you want to keep that. You can't have this head turn round when it gets small. You know what I mean? Like things like that. It's just think of this but smaller, and then with less detail, or maybe no detail. Sometimes you draw heads so small it's literally just the shape and the silhouette of the hair. And I mean, a character can still look real handsome just like that. Like that's a handsome small head that looks like someone who's maybe cool. He could be like a high school student. I mean, you can get a vibe from that, even though that's just a scribble that I did. But it's still a solid shaped head that sort of is similar to this. You wouldn't mistake this head for this guy. You wouldn't mistake this head for this guy. So if you can keep stuff like that, I'd said in another video that Jim Lee, although you might go, well, Jim kind of does the same thing on his face. It's like a girl's eyes might be like this. He may do this for a nose, and he might have like something like this for the lips. You know what I mean? Like, and there's like little ciphers that he does. But like, if you look at how he draws Voodoo, and this is kind of an ugly face because there's a few things going on. The distances of this stuff is kind of weird. But anyway, Voodoo had kind of more of this sort of face. Her chin was super narrow, so he might have a little bit of this going on, but it would be kind of like this. This is a little like this. So this might be sort of his Voodoo shaped head. Again, the eyes are off. Like I can just grab it. that's like a little better, just so she doesn't look completely bizarre. But anyway, so like this is his voodoo head. And then she'd have like a nice, like, thin neck. Okay, now, like, his zealot head was like a little bit different. Like, zealot, I think, had, I'm trying to remember what he did that was like slightly different. I think zealot might have had like a square chin. I mean, obviously her hairstyle was a little different too. She kind of had the short sort of hair thing going on. He may have also done something with the lengths of the noses or something like that, but I'm trying to think. Oh, their lips, I think, are different too. I want to say Zealot might have had thinner lips. Maybe like square bottom. Again, I'm just doing this as fast as possible just to get the basic idea down. But you know what I mean? Like, these two character faces do look different. She's got like a little bit of a rounder jaw. She's got more of like you know, like this is kind of like a top cow girl head. Like Turner kind of does heads like this. Mark would mimic it. J. Scott Campbell, like Free Fall and Fairchild, sort of had the overall shape was like this. And this is more of like a Travis type head. So, but you would want to keep that consistent, the overall silhouette of the head as you do them. So I hope that helps. Again, it's a lot to explain in a short video without going way long. All right, so let's see. Now, Martin's second question: what is your opinion on using photos for backgrounds in case that whole page is establishing shot? So basically, only a filtered photo. I did a church that way. Well, it's it's your personal choice on it. I mean, far be it from me to tell anyone really how to do their art. I try to give advice, and I don't say this in every video, but whenever I say something and you don't agree with it, that's fine. It's only I try not to be so opinionated that I'm not open-minded to stuff, and I hope that when I explain stuff, it comes across that way. That all I'm doing is I'm just kind of giving you sort of like base information, and you can really take it any way you want. But I don't like I mean, look, this is what I was going to say, and I don't remember what question was, but I kind of glanced at these like either real early this morning or last night. But ultimately, remember this: you're not drawing to impress other artists. Although I think most artists, when they draw, are more concerned about what other artists are going to say. I don't know that for a fact. I don't know how you guys feel about that. But if I'm ever doing new pieces or doing anything, I'm more concerned about other professionals seeing the work and going, this guy sucks, or like, that reminds me of this, or oh, like, this is that, or this is this. And like for you, oh, he used a photo for a background. Like, come on. Like, now, a normal person is gonna like like an art collector that's just a fan of comics and wants to collect original art, or someone on Instagram that just loves the Marvel movies and follows comic book artists because that's sort of their hobby, or someone that reads comics, like pure fans that maybe like to draw but don't draw like a professional. They have such a different perspective. It's honestly, it's a good idea occasionally to watch like fan videos just to remind yourself that not everybody is like a professional that's like analyzing art. And I have to make this clear too, not that it really matters, like I don't think anyone really cares. I talk about all this stuff because I'm on Patreon. I talk about all this stuff because I'm on YouTube. But I really don't think about this stuff as much as it might seem. But because I'm asked questions and I'm able to explain myself decently, I can come up with answers for all of you. But for me, like analyzing art and stuff like that really always was more of a intuition more than some sort of like road like book that I was creating. You know what I mean? Where it was like I, I'm able to pick up on subtle stuff. And so for me, I have to do it. I think I have to be really open, where it's like you almost just become like sort of like a receiver of information, where it's like almost have to like defocus and then just consume the image or the music that I'm listening to, and then I kind of like I let it explain to me what it's trying to be. It sounds weird, but um you know what I mean? And that's how I internalize it. But if someone said, "Well, when you listen to that song, what did you hear?" Well, then I have the verbal ability to be able to explain it, and because I think I've done it for so long, or I've been around people that maybe don't that aren't as observant as me, and I'm not putting myself on any kind of pedestal. There's lots of people that are very observant in different ways, or beyond what I am. But you know, you would explain to them what it is that you're hearing, or you have like if you have people that are like similar, you know, you can talk about stuff and you go, wow, it's like crazy how we talk about this versus like if I was going to talk to like someone else. But I mean, you're just going to have to use your own instincts on did you like the way that it looked? Did it blend into your work good? You know, I personally wouldn't use photos in my art, but I would use reference if I needed to for something, or if I wanted to. Not even needed to. Sometimes I want a level of quote unquote not realism, but like there's a level of nuance that you get from reference, like you using the picture of the church. There's little subtle shadows. There's little subtle details. There's the whatever it is, there's all this like small information that I really enjoy and have always enjoyed since I was a kid. I was always fascinated with the idea of being able to draw photos um and turn them into art. I just think it's a really cool thing, but not portraits. I'm talking about like really crazy shit, you know, like a crowd of people, or like, you know, a table full of like cash, you know, coins and money and poker chips, like real detailed stuff. I was very interested in like could I turn that into a drawing? I mean, I think it shows in my art sometimes that like I have a interest in minutia. But yeah, like if you like the way that it looks, then just keep doing it. But if you ultimately feel like, meh, it's not that it pulls me out of the moment, you know, in your story. Oh, that I mean, maybe try to use the photo as the reference for the piece that you draw. Does that make sense? So, all right, and then let's get to more number twos. Cameron, what's up? It's funny, you guys are asking me for the like Martin's third question, your question right here. You're gonna laugh when I say this, but I'm being honest and I'm not trying to be cool when I say this. Is there ever an exception to breaking the 180 plane of action rule? I don't know what that is. I've heard people say that. I have no idea what that rule is, other than it must be a storytelling thing that doesn't work, like moving a camera a certain way. I again, I kind of work on instinct more, but let me see. Is there ever an exception to breaking the 180 plane of action rule? So I don't recall the exact term. In my humble opinion, attempts at doing sequentials, I was wondering if a facial zoom in would be a way to switch around if needed. Well, I mean, you don't want your characters moving in a scene. I don't even know if I could. Um, you know, you don't want someone that's initially on the left to all of a sudden end up on the right. You know what I mean? Where like, I again, this is like a lot to sort of like try to imagine just all at once. I don't know if you've got Joe here and Frank here, and there's a table in between them, and a window here. I don't even know what I'm doing, to be honest. Yeah, we'll figure this out as I go. This is a door. So Joe is standing in front of Frank's desk, and Frank is sitting here. It's Joe and Frank and a window. There's a file cabinet here. There's a bookshelf behind Frank, and this is the door of his detective office. So this is your establishing shot. Joe and Frank. All right. Now, oh yeah, yeah. Let's see. All right. So, what was your question? Um, well, okay, like you wouldn't want all of a sudden Joe here talking to Frank down here, I don't think. Like if this was panel 2 and all of a sudden you had Joe, well, you could do that, I think, because it still makes sense. Joe is in front of the desk and Frank is sitting behind the desk looking at Joe. Although you flip the shot, they are. I mean, it could be confusing because Frank initially was on the right and Joe is on the left, but I think that um this would be 180. You know, you flipped at 180, and then you could flip it back and have Frank looking up at Joe. He's looking this way at Joe, and Joe could be standing here looking down at Frank. This is the table. Sorry. Frank's smaller. Frank's body is here, and this is Frank's head. He's looking up at Joe. So Joe, Frank. I'm trying to think of a bad example. Meaning something that completely didn't work. There'll be someone probably will comment and be able to explain it more. I would just read it and look at the book, honestly. Like if you're really that interested in it, I just use common sense in a scene. To be honest, I mean I don't really need to know the term. It's like if someone is standing in a certain spot and I want to move the camera around, I don't all of a sudden move someone. I literally saw someone mess up with that. It might have been something that Kelsey and I were looking at, or it was something that I was looking at recently. I don't know if it was a review or a lesson or something like that, but someone messed up, and I could see that it was. I said it was a little confusing at the time, but yeah, I mean, I know common sense isn't common when you're inexperienced and you're trying to learn this stuff, but I hope that at least that gives you an idea of what I'm talking about. Um, and then I guess obviously you wouldn't want objects in the room to move around in weird ways. You know, where like, and I've seen people do that too. Where remember Joe is here and this is Frank. You wouldn't want all of a sudden Joe in front of the window. And I have definitely seen stuff like that where it's like now all of a sudden there's a window behind Joe that didn't ever exist because Joe is in front of the door and you've got Joe here, you know, telling Frank, "Look, you've been terrible. You're a terrible boss." And I'm so sick of working for you, but all of a sudden there's like a random window behind him that you never established in the room. Um, that would be problematic. But I think I'm trying to think of another example of where you would mess up on it. But I promise you that if you really just pursue the information in a book, it's probably very I'm sure they show an example of it right and wrong. So give that a look. But would a facial zoom in be a way to switch around if needed? I mean, I suppose would depend on I'd have to see it to understand exactly what you mean. But yeah, I'm sorry, I don't really know what the 180 plane of action rule is. All right, so Matt, it's got that, and then this. We got all those covered. All right, and then this one is another one where I don't know the save the cat in the hero's journey. I've heard those terms, but no, I don't. I don't use those structures. But what ultimately ended up happening, I've shared this story before. So I wrote Blaster Kid in chunks, meaning that like I'll roll out exactly how I came up with Blaster Kid. So first I had drawings and I had the name, but they weren't together. The name Blaster Kid was my DeviantArt name. The drawings were just drawings that I did of like a robot girl. And at some point I kind of went like, hey, this and this together sort of works. This could be Blaster Kid. So that was the genesis of the sort of just like core idea. Then as I had it, I kind of like went, well, what's the gear that Blaster Kid wears? Okay, well, like what if it was a bomb? If she had like a bomb on her, like a bomb like was part of her body. And I've said this way in the past. This is like 10 years later or something. The way I can explain it is like if you ever saw Escape from New York, and they put the bombs in Snake Plissken's neck. So when I made up Blaster Kid, that was never a consideration. It wasn't the inspiration for it, but they're similar. It's a character that's sent on a mission with an explosive attached to her. I've hesitated on that exact idea, is the because I don't want people to think that she's a suicide bomber type scenario. Snake wasn't a suicide person either. It was a threat to make sure that he came back. But anyway, there was a similarity, and I went like, oh, okay, like if I was ever going to explain to someone that you wanted to give them the elevator pitch, and hopefully, like most people know Escape from New York. Many don't, though. As you move along in life, some 19-year-old might have no idea what Escape from New York is. And you might not either, Martin. Maybe you've never seen it. But anyway, so at some point, Kelsey, maybe like 5 or 6 months ago, sent me a couple of YouTube channels that had like the writer YouTube channels. I don't follow them anymore, so I don't even remember what they were. But you can find this stuff on YouTube. I could ask Kelsey. He would remember. But anyway, but there was one guy had like a checklist, or it was like a link to a website where it was like 32 things to check if your story is like solid. You could probably Google it and find literally the same exact article. Just like put like, how do you check your script to make sure if it's solid, or like 21 things to look for. I'm sure it'll recommend what I saw, because I didn't find some special hidden archive of like writer information. But anyway, so long story short, over a period of time, I came up with scenes for Blaster Kid. Like I was like, oh, it would be cool if she did this, and this would be something that I could see her going through in her life. Like who would her father be? Who would, like, does she have brothers and sisters? What would be the like city that she's living in or growing up in? Where would they send a character like this? Where would she go? Why would she go? Like, what would be the circumstances that a bad guy would put a bomb on like a teenage girl or like a young adult and send them on a mission? Like, what would that be? So all these plates were in the air at that point, and then I just started to craft them all together. And then I started to world build, which world building for me is a lot of fun, where like I created like a sandbox, quote unquote, for where the Blaster Kid universe would take place. And then you start thinking about like the planet that they live on. It sounds like the scale gets big quick, but it's just, there are things that you have to contemplate when you write a story. Is there magic? Is there superheroes? Is there technology beyond the planet that they live in? Do they have electricity? If you're doing a World War II story, a lot of that stuff is sort of right there for you. But anyway, so then you take the main scenes that you have and this outline. So is it one story or is it four stories? I think, didn't George Lucas say, like, when he was writing Star Wars, like he kind of wrote the first three movies sort of all at the same time? I could be misquoting on that, but anyway, for me, I always had the first story of Blaster Kid, but I wasn't sure it was one comic. When I sent it to a writer friend of mine, and he goes, this is a lot for one comic book. This could definitely be more than one book. And that was the first time that I ever considered that the first quote unquote story that I had for the character was too much for one single comic. You know what I mean? Like maybe it's a 6-issue series, not just a one shot deal. But ultimately, as I sat on that idea for like a year, I ended up coming up with like a sequel and then a third sequel, because it was like, after the first adventure completes, where would she go? Like, what would happen then? And as I started to kind of play around with that idea, all of a sudden I went like, oh my God, like that would be fucking great. Is like, this could be the second story, is she has to do this. She has to find this. She has to meet these people. She has to do these things. And that turned into a third story. So I all like literally in one morning I was walking, and I just in like an hour came up with like the next 2 books for Blaster Kid, which was really exciting. But anyway, to craft the first finished story, once I had it done, and I went like, this is how I believe the story would end. This is how it starts. These are the things that happen in between these things. You'll have blank spots that you need to connect, and characters that need to make sense, and timelines that need to match up. But anyway, Kelsey had sent me this thing, or we talked about it, and I Googled and found this checklist thing, and it was I think like 30 things to check your script to see if it's solid. Of the 30 things that it listed, I think I only didn't have two of the 30. Like, so I don't, like, say it's the Save the Cat or Hero's Journey. Um, um, you know, it hit all the notes. And the ones that I was off on were things that were very minor, and also things that really, I can't remember exactly what it was, but they like, on a scale of 1 to 5, 5 being that they were like big mistakes, they were like literally like a 1 or 2. They were barely like anything that would cause any problems. And I think that they were already things that I had kind of like sort of considered, but opted to go like a different route. Because look, any of this stuff, there's always wiggle room. There's like even if you like say, I've heard the Save the Cat, and I've heard of Hero's Journey. Even if you use one of those two templates to create a story, which I wouldn't recommend, to be honest. I think that I think any kind of structure going into a writing process is a really bad idea. Why would you want to start creating something with parameters? It makes no sense to me. Use the parameters to cultivate the story or to fine tune it. But look, there'll be someone that doesn't write that'll disagree with me. Someone will go, "Oh no, that's bullshit. You should totally start with this and that." And it's like, well, okay, what stories have you written? Like, prove to me that what you're saying is accurate. What I'm saying is Paul McCartney like supposedly doesn't read music. Now, what does that mean? It doesn't really mean much, but what it means is that he creates in his head, he creates in his mind. When he is coming up with an idea for a song, he's just imagining like melodies. So he doesn't put any limits on it. He doesn't know if he can play a melody on the piano when he's making it up. He's just creating the melody. Your mind can do more. Like right now, if you picture a scene in your mind, you may not be able to draw it. Like, you might not have the ability to draw that scene, but you can make it up. You know what I mean? And then the challenge is like, how do you get that into a drawing? But I think the same goes for writing. Is write freely, and write a lot, and get a lot of ideas down, and then try to put it together so that there's some sort of order to it, and then check it versus Save the Cat or Hero's Journey. How much does it line up with that thing? The things that don't line up, does it matter to you or does it not matter? You know what I mean? Like do you think it's catastrophic to not have, the fourth checklist marker of the hero's journey kind of thing? So what Kelsey said to me, because I wrote him back, or I said to him after I had checked it, I said, wow, it's really cool. I went through Blaster Kid's script, and the script is quite long. I mean, it's like if I was to sit down and read it right now, it takes a long time to read, because I wrote it like if I was giving it to someone else and they had never, like, they didn't know anything about the book. Um, and I draw it in the Marvel style. That's the irony. Is I know the story so well. When I draw it, I let the images sort of dictate the scenes. So although like my script might say like panel 1 is this, panel 2 is this, panel 3 is this, when I'm drawing it, I don't actually use that as like the exact template. It's kind of funny that I don't even follow my own script. I do in a broad sense, though. You know what I'm saying? It's like if there was a bar, like if someone went to a bar and there was a bar fight, and then they steal motorcycles and drive away like when they leave. It's not in Blaster Kid. Just making up a funny scenario. It's like I don't change that scene, but my original script of like, he grabs a glass and throws it at someone. That stuff may not be exactly the same if I just, when I'm drawing it or I'm coming up with the ideas, I don't like it. But what Kelsey said is, he goes, well, probably the reason that you did it right is because you've followed good stories. You know what I mean? You've read good stories, you've seen good movies, and you just sort of naturally know how a story should roll out. but it was exciting to see because there were little subtle things that I never even considered that I had done. But I remember towards the end of the story really wanting to ramp up the intensity of it, and so there's like crazy stuff going on, and I decided that it was like although it was crazy and it was intense, I was like I want to kind of ramp it up a little bit more, and that was exactly what one of the checklists was, and I had just done it totally on instinct, but it was like I can't remember what they refer to it as, but like um I don't. I mean, I can't even think of a movie example. I'll make one up that's fake. But like, imagine at the end of Star Wars, if um, when Luke was going to like blow up the Death Star, his ship like completely like fell apart or something like that. So it was like it was already a crazy situation to begin with, but now like his ship doesn't work, and they're freaking out because like the Death Star is ready to blow up the planet, and like everybody's getting killed that's trying to fight the bad guys already in space, and Luke can't get out of the hangar, so they've got to literally figure out like, and there's no more X-wings in the hangar, that kind of thing, you know what I mean, where you're really ramping up the like sort of like oh shit factor. So I hope that that helps. It's a lot of information, and it actually covers your fourth question, which is what's your writing process. So my writing process is be creative as possible, get down as many ideas as possible, and then the discipline part is going through all those ideas, finding which work for the story that you're trying to tell, organizing them in a way, filling in the gaps and connecting things, making sure that things make sense. In a way, it's similar to this 180 action plane rule, just in broad strokes, meaning that it has to make sense. You know what I mean? You can't have a character that I don't know. You know what I mean? Like it's just you have to be true to the track that you put things on. The structure of like the character's behavior, where they're at, what their age is. I mean, all that can play a factor. It's a lot to juggle, but you can make it dumb and fun, which is just it's like, hey, my main character is a monster guy that's from hell and fights you know other bad guys, and that's your story. It's a monster that lives in New York City, and they bring him in to fight other monsters that are terrorizing the town. You know, you'll still have a rule book that you'll need to sort of like keep to. But again, rules are meant to be broken, so it's like nothing is set in stone. And in fact, unpredictability and things that maybe people aren't expecting make stuff fun too. So just try to be as creative as possible. So I hope that helps. I want to thank all of you guys for being patrons. If you're on either the review or lesson tier right now, just stay on it for the moment, because Patreon will, like get you sorted. You may after the first have to re-sign up on one of the lower tiers, and then for anyone that's interested in lesson reviews, all you need to do is just direct message me through Patreon, and we can set it up on the side. Right now, there's of the 14 hours I'm allotting for reviews and lessons. I think right now we're only at like the 3 hours are like booked, so there's still plenty of time. I think after the first, it'll ramp up a lot, just because people will realize that they're not on those tiers anymore. And then at some point, if I have more time, I can always put those tiers back. It's just the reason for limiting it or taking it off of Patreon was 100%. I can't control the workflow, meaning that if 150 people signed up for reviews, I need to do 150 reviews. With booking them on my own, it's the same exact process, really, other than the fact that I can go, hey, this month I've already taken as many reviews as I can handle. Why don't we do this? As soon as next month starts, just send me the stuff that you're working on. So that's going to be how I'm going to do it. It's just a queue. You pay for a lesson, you get in the queue. Once I've done 14 hours of lessons in a month, then you're put on to the next month. So you'll always be able to get in, and it'll just be a rotating process like that. So it'll work out good, and I'll do that for as long as possible. So, all right, you guys have a great day. Hopefully that was helpful. Like I said, drawing in the question and answers can get real time consuming. Luckily, we didn't have a ton of questions, but yeah, it's very, very difficult to do a lot of drawing examples in there. But hopefully the gist of things will sink in. And then, look, you're always going to be cross-referencing books. There's never going to be kind of like a one and done sort of accumulation of like an answer for things. I mean, occasionally that'll happen, but even for me, like learning perspective, I mean, I even to this day, if I'm drawing something and I don't know, if I'm not 100% convinced I remember the perspective rule, I mean, I've got at least two perspective books I can see right now sitting here. There may be another one. I don't know. Is that the only two? I may just have the two in here. I think I have some PDFs on my computer of other ones. But I mean, normally I can kind of fake my way through stuff if worst case scenario. But I just had to keep going back to stuff. Like I wish that there was a book that was perfect for shadows, like lighting and shadows. Like you went like, man, if you want to get one book that explains everything about light and shadow on figures and lighting rooms, this is the book. Never really seems to work that way. It's like there's 8 pages in one book that's really good. This other book has got some good stuff, and you kind of cobble stuff together. So just get used to it, because that's generally how it will work. Is it's accumulation of things, because we all have different tastes. That's the thing, is one person's great book might not connect with you, might not look cool. So all right, have a great day. Talk to you later. Bye. I'm doing the review raffles next.